Elena Moretti's fingers moved with practiced precision across the holographic display, adjusting the seam allowance on a vintage dress pattern from 2025. The apartment around her was small, rent-controlled, a relic from before the property algorithm had priced everyone else out of pre-war Brooklyn buildings. Basil, her rescue dog, dozed in a patch of afternoon sunlight that fell through the original iron-framed windows. Outside, delivery drones hummed past in their designated air corridors, and the street below pulsed with the familiar chaos of people who still walked instead of taking private pods. Her neural implant buzzed softly behind her right ear. A message from Aunt Francesca materialized in her peripheral vision, overlaid on the real world like an unwanted thought. Family dinner tonight. 6 p.m. sharp. Don't be late again. The text was accompanied by the family crest, a gold Moretti M that still made Elena's stomach tighten with something between obligation and dread. She dismissed the message with a blink command and turned back to her work. The dress was genuine vintage, pulled from an estate sale before the automated resellers could mark it up 300%. She'd spent 2 weeks researching the original construction methods, watching archived videos of seamstresses who'd worked with actual fabric instead of programmable smart textiles. Her mother had taught her that real craftsmanship meant understanding the past, not just optimizing it with algorithms. On her desk, a framed photograph gathered dust. Young Elena, maybe 10 years old, standing beside her father outside the Woolworth building. Antonio Moretti pointing upward at the Gothic Revival architecture, his mouth open mid-explanation about terracotta and the labor of artisans who'd carved beauty into every surface. He'd died 3 months after that photo was taken. Heart attack. The family had buried him quickly and moved on faster. Elena saved her work and stood, stretching. The apartment was 400 square feet of carefully curated authenticity in a world obsessed with the new. Vintage furniture she'd restored herself. Books, actual paper books, lining shelves she'd built from reclaimed wood. Architectural blueprints rolled in the corner, hand-drafted instead of AI-generated. Everything here was a quiet rebellion against the Moretti family philosophy that newer meant better, that visible wealth meant success, that status scores and social metrics defined a person's worth. Her personal device chimed. Her mother's face appeared in holographic miniature above her wrist display. Maria Moretti, 62 years old and still working as a seamstress despite Elena's repeated offers to retire her. Pride, Maria called it. Stubbornness, Elena thought, recognizing where she'd inherited the trait. You're going tonight? Maria asked without preamble. I always go, you don't have to. We could have dinner here. Just us, Elena smiled, though her mother couldn't see it through the audio-only connection. And give Aunt Francesca the satisfaction? She'd spend the next 6 months telling everyone how I'm too ashamed to show my face. Let her talk, Mama, I'll be fine. It's just dinner, it's never just dinner with them. Maria's voice carried decades of experience with Moretti family gatherings. They'll ask about your teaching. About your apartment. About why you're still single. And you'll sit there and take it because you're better than they are. Is that a compliment or a criticism? Both. Maria sighed. I'll be there at 5:30. We'll arrive together. After the call ended, Elena stood at her window and watched the city. Manhattan rose across the East River, a forest of smart glass towers that adjusted their opacity based on solar gain and resident preferences. Holographic advertisements floated between buildings, targeting passers-by based on their purchase history and social credit scores. Somewhere in that gleaming landscape, Aunt Francesca was preparing for tonight's performance, arranging the perfect setting to remind everyone exactly where they ranked in the family hierarchy. Elena's reflection stared back at her from the window glass. She looked like her father, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that noticed everything, the kind of face that photographed poorly because it was too expressive for still images. She'd never been beautiful in the way Vivian, Dominic's wife, was beautiful. Never had the sculpted symmetry that came from genetic optimization and surgical refinement. Her beauty, if you could call it that, was the old-fashioned kind that required time and attention to appreciate. She pulled the vintage dress from her workspace, holding it against her body. The fabric was real silk, something that would cost a month's salary now if you could even find it. the Morettas would hate it. They'd mistake it for poverty instead of choice, desperation instead of authenticity. Let them, the neural implant buzzed again. This time it was Isabella, her cousin, with a video call request. Elena hesitated. Then accepted. Isabella's face materialized in high definition, floating at eye level. Behind her, the Moretti Hotel's corporate office gleamed with the kind of casual wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Elena. Just checking you're coming tonight. Aunt Francesca's been asking. I'll be there. Great. I'm so excited for you to meet Marco. He's this amazing investor working with Dom on the new properties. Very successful. Very handsome. Isabella's smile had that performative quality that came from too many years of influencer training. Maybe you two will hit it off? You could use someone successful in your life. Elena felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the physical manifestation of swallowing words that wanted to be shouted. I'm successful, Isabella, of course you are. Teaching is so important. I just meant, financially successful. Someone who could take care of you. You can't live in that tiny apartment forever. The apartment is fine, it's not even AI enabled. How do you function without smart walls and automated climate control? Isabella laughed, the sound calculated to seem spontaneous. Anyway, see you tonight. Wear something nice, okay? First impressions matter with people like Marco. The call ended before Elena could respond. She stood in the silent apartment, feeling the weight of decades of similar conversations, similar assumptions, similar casual cruelties disguised as concern. Her family had perfected the art of making someone feel small while claiming to want them to succeed. It was a gift, really. A terrible, exhausting gift. At 5:30, Maria arrived in a modest self-driving car that Elena had programmed to pick her up. Her mother looked elegant in a simple dress she'd made herself, her hands showing the evidence of 40 years working with fabric and thread. They rode in silence across the bridge, watching the city transform around them as they entered Manhattan's ultra-wealthy core. The Moretti penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a smart glass tower in Tribeca. The building's AI greeted them by name as they entered, scanning their biometrics and summoning a private elevator. As they rose, Elena watched the city fall away below them, all those lives and struggles rendered insignificant by altitude. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. The space was exactly what you'd expect from people who confused expense with taste. Every surface gleamed with the kind of perfection that only constant algorithmic adjustment could maintain. The floors were Italian marble with embedded LEDs that created subtle patterns as you walked. The walls were programmable smart glass, currently displaying a curated selection of contemporary art that rotated based on some designer's idea of sophistication. The furniture was all custom fabricated, each piece ergonomically optimized and hideously uncomfortable. Aunt Francesca stood near the windows, backlit by the Manhattan skyline. She was 68 but looked 50, thanks to the kind of medical intervention that made aging seem like a choice rather than an inevitability. Her dress was worth more than Elena's annual salary, her jewelry connected to her neural implant so it could change color based on her mood or outfit needs. Elena. Maria. So glad you could make it. Francesca's smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. We wouldn't miss it, Maria said, her voice carrying just enough edge to make it clear they both knew what tonight would involve. Dominic emerged from somewhere deeper in the penthouse, already holding a drink despite the early hour. He was 37, conventionally handsome in the way expensive genetic selection and personal training created, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Elena's car. His wife Vivian trailed behind him, her face a testament to surgical precision and aesthetic trends that changed faster than anyone could keep up with. The guest of honor, Dominic announced, his voice carrying that particular tone of false enthusiasm he reserved for charity events and family gatherings. Elena, you look comfortable, thank you. Still teaching at that school in the Bronx? He said it like someone might say, still living in a cave or still eating with your hands, still teaching, that's dedication. Real dedication. Most people would have moved up by now, gotten into administration or consulting, but you're still in the classroom. that's admirable. Really? He took a drink, his expression suggesting it was anything but admirable. Vivian air-kissed Elena without making actual contact. That dress. Is it vintage? It's so authentic. I could never pull off something so deliberately unfashionable. But you make it work. It's very you, thank you, Elena said again, meaning something entirely different. Isabella appeared with her fiancé, some hedge fund manager whose name Elena had already forgotten despite meeting him twice. They were both surgically enhanced to the point of looking like slightly different versions of the same person. Their neural implants were top of the line, probably military grade, flashing status symbols in the corners of their vision that only people with similarly expensive tech could see. Elena. You came. And you wore that. Isabella's smile was sympathetic. Come on, let me get you a drink. You look like you need one. Sophia, Dominic and Vivian's 8-year-old daughter, broke away from her nanny and ran across the room. She wrapped herself around Elena's legs with the desperate affection of a child who'd learned early that her parents preferred their social calendar to their daughter, Aunt Lena. Did you bring the pictures? Elena crouched down, matching Sophia's eye level. I did, Piccola. After dinner, I'll show you pictures of the pretty buildings, the prettiest ones I could find. Sophia, don't bother Aunt Elena. Vivian's voice was sharp. She's tired from working so hard all week. I'm never too tired for Sophia, Elena said, keeping her eyes on the little girl. Still, sweetie, come with Nanny. The adults need to talk about boring things. Sophia allowed herself to be led away, but she looked back at Elena with eyes that understood more than any 8-year-old should have to. The doorbell chimed, an unnecessary affectation in a building where the AI knew who was arriving before they reached the elevator. Francesca brightened visibly, smoothing her dress. Ah, our special guest. The door opened, and Elena felt the air in the room shift in that indefinable way that happens when someone genuinely important enters a space. Marco Chen was 36, Taiwanese American. Wearing a suit that managed to be both perfectly tailored and completely unpretentious. He moved with the kind of quiet confidence that came from actually having power instead of just performing it. His neural implant was subtle, barely visible, the kind only true experts could properly calibrate. Marco. Welcome. Dominic crossed the room with exaggerated enthusiasm, hand extended. Everyone, this is Marco Chen, founder of Chen Restoration Finance. He's considering a major partnership with Moretti Hotels. Marco greeted each person with polite efficiency, his handshake firm but brief. His eyes were intelligent, observant, taking in details most people missed. When Dominic introduced Elena, something changed. Not obviously, Marco was too controlled for that, but Elena saw it. A flicker of interest, of recognition, of something. And this is my cousin Elena. She teaches art history at a public school in the Bronx. We helped her get through college. Dominic said it the way someone might say, we rescued this puppy from a shelter. Elena extended her hand. Mr. Chen. Marco took it, and she felt the deliberate pressure of his grip, the way he held her hand a fraction longer than necessary. Please, Marco. Art history, that's fascinating. Which period do you specialize in? The question caught her off guard. Nobody at these dinners ever asked her actual questions. They made statements disguised as questions, little verbal traps designed to showcase their own knowledge or highlight her limitations. Architecture, actually. Pre-war American buildings. Art Deco, Beaux-Arts, the period when craftsmanship still mattered more than algorithmic optimization. Marco's smile was subtle but genuine. That's a specific passion. Buildings tell stories. Most people just see structures. I see history, craftsmanship, the layers of human life embedded in stone and steel. Their eyes locked. Elena felt something electric pass between them, some recognition of shared understanding that was entirely inappropriate for a family dinner where she was supposed to be the charity case and he was supposed to be the important business partner. Vivian materialized between them with practiced social warfare. Marco, you'll love discussing real architecture with Dominic. Our hotels are all cutting-edge design. Zero historical baggage, maximum efficiency. Very exclusive, I'm sure, Marco said, but his eyes stayed on Elena for another heartbeat before he turned away. They moved to dinner. The table was obscenely large, programmable smart glass that could display anything from family photos to business presentations. Tonight it showed an elegant but generic pattern that probably came from some designer's curated collection. Elena found herself seated between her mother and Isabella's fiancé, while Marco was positioned next to Dominic across from her. Perfect. She'd have to watch him all evening while her family performed their usual routine of explaining why success looked like them and failure looked like her. Dominic started his pitch before the first course even arrived. Marco, let me walk you through the Moretti vision. We're acquiring properties across Manhattan, transforming underutilized buildings into luxury experiences. Hotels, restaurants, rooftop bars. We target buildings with potential, outdated properties we can revolutionize. Transform how? Marco asked, his tone neutral. Complete gut renovations. Strip out the old infrastructure, maximize square footage, install the latest smart building tech. Luxury finishes. Premium pricing, targeted to the ultra-wealthy demographic. That's where the real money is. What about the existing building's historical significance? Dominic laughed, the sound dismissive. Historical? Marco, history doesn't generate returns. Our investors want profit, not preservation. The past is dead. We're building the future, exactly. Vivian chimed in, her voice pitched for emphasis. Who cares if a building is old? Old means outdated, inefficient, worthless. New is always better. Elena felt the words rising in her throat before she could stop them. Not always. The table went quiet. Dominic looked at her with the expression of someone who'd just heard their dog speak. Sorry, Elena, I said not always. Some old buildings are worth preserving. They represent craftsmanship and architectural innovation we can't replicate. Dominic's smile was patronizing. Elena teaches teenagers about dusty art, Marco. She doesn't understand market realities. No offense, cuz, but there's a reason you're teaching and not building. Marco ignored Dominic entirely, turning to face Elena directly. What makes a building worth saving? The question hung in the air. Everyone was staring at her now, waiting for her to say something naive or sentimental that they could dismiss. Craftsmanship we've lost, Elena said, meeting Marco's gaze. Architectural details that modern construction can't economically reproduce. Community memory, people fell in love in those buildings, raised families, built lives. When you demolish that, you don't just destroy stone and steel. You erase stories. You disconnect communities from their past. That's beautifully put, Marco said, and she could hear that he meant it. Vivian laughed, the sound calculated. Elena's so sentimental. Must be nice to care about things that don't matter. Beauty always matters, Maria said quietly, her first contribution to the conversation. Francesca gave her daughter-in-law a look. Beauty and business are different things, Maria. Dominic sensed he was losing control of the conversation and pivoted back to his pitch. Speaking of business, Marco, our latest acquisition is the Bellevue on Madison. 1920s building, completely outdated. We're planning full demolition, rebuild as a boutique hotel. 50 rooms, ultra-luxury, targeting the billionaire class. We got it for a steal, $30 million. Marco sat back slightly. The Bellevue. Art Deco? Yeah, lots of decorative stuff that'll have to go. Bronze elevator doors, marble lobby, all that inefficient design. We're stripping it down to the structure and starting fresh. Elena's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. The Bellevue on Madison? With the original Lalique glass fixtures, Dominic looked surprised she knew the detail. Probably? Why, no reason. She set down her fork carefully. Aware that Marco was watching her with sudden intensity, Isabella jumped in with false enthusiasm. Elena, maybe you should give up teaching and get into real estate. Clearly you know buildings. Vivian's laugh was like breaking glass. Oh, she couldn't. Real estate requires capital, connections, risk tolerance. No offense, Elena, but that's not really your world. None taken, Elena said, sipping her wine. Marco leaned forward, his attention entirely on Elena now. Dominic might as well have disappeared. What would you do with the Bellevue, Elena? If you could, Marco, we're not redesigning, Dominic started, I'm asking Elena. Marco's voice was firm, final. The tone of someone who didn't need to explain himself. The table went silent. Marco Chen, the powerful investor everyone was trying to impress, had just prioritized the art teacher's opinion over the CEO's pitch. Elena met his challenge. I'd restore it. Every detail. The lobby has original terrazzo floors under that cheap carpet. The Lalique fixtures are priceless, literally impossible to replicate with modern manufacturing. The bronze elevator doors have hand-carved Art Deco patterns that represent thousands of hours of skilled labor. The building is a time capsule of an era when beauty mattered as much as function, and then? Marco prompted. Mixed-income housing. Manhattan is losing its soul. Every old building becomes luxury condos nobody can afford. The Bellevue could house artists, teachers, families, people who make neighborhoods actually function instead of just being investment vehicles for absent owners. Not profitable, Marco said. It wasn't a question, depends on how you define profit. Financial returns? No. But community impact, architectural preservation, housing accessibility, those have value beyond quarterly earnings reports. Marco's smile was subtle but warm. What if I told you I agree? I'd say you're in the wrong business meeting. Maybe I'm at exactly the right meeting. Just the wrong side of the table. The chemistry between them was suddenly obvious, electric, completely derailing the carefully orchestrated dinner. Dominic's expression darkened. Francesca looked calculating. Vivian seemed genuinely confused, unable to process why the important investor was flirting with the poor cousin. Dominic's face had gone the particular shade of red that came from equal parts fury and embarrassment, the kind of color no amount of genetic optimization could prevent. He set down his drink with enough force that the smart glass table registered the impact, sending ripples of light across its surface. Marco, about the partnership. Our timeline for the Bellevue, before we discuss that. Marco interrupted, his voice calm but absolute. I have a confession to make. He pulled out his device, a sleek piece of tech that probably cost more than most people's cars, and projected a document into the air above the table. The hologram rotated slowly, legal text rendered in crisp blue light. He flicked it toward Dominic with a gesture that looked casual but was probably precisely calculated. Dominic read, and Elena watched the color drain from his face like someone had opened a valve. His expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, then something approaching panic. This says the Bellevue sale fell through, not fell through. Marco corrected. You were outbid. The table went silent. Even the ambient music the penthouse AI had been playing seemed to fade, as if the building itself was listening. That's impossible, Dominic said, but his voice had lost its certainty. We offered 30 million. Cash. Immediate close, someone offered 45. Vivian's surgically perfected face attempted an expression of shock. Who would pay that much for that old building? Marco's eyes flicked to Elena for just a moment, so brief that anyone not watching closely would have missed it. But Elena was watching. Her heart hammered against her ribs in a rhythm her neural implant probably registered as stress. She kept her face neutral. The same mask of patient tolerance she'd worn at these dinners for a decade. The buyer was anonymous, Marco said. A preservation trust called EM Properties. They've been outbidding Moretti hotels for 18 months now. Every historic property you've targeted, the Gramercy brownstone, the Chelsea Theatre, the Upper West Side apartment building with the original moldings. All bought by EM Properties. Francesca leaned forward, her jewelry shifting colors from gold to sharp red. The neural-linked accessories responded to stress hormones. Elena had always found them grotesque, the way they broadcast emotions their wearers tried to hide. Why are you telling us this, Mr. Chin? Because I finance EM Properties restorations. And I've been trying to meet the owner for a year. Dominic's expression hardened. What does this have to do with our partnership? Marco turned to look at Elena directly now, and the weight of his attention felt physical, like stepping into sunlight after hours in shadow. Your cousin has been very modest. Elena felt her mother's hand find hers under the table, a gentle pressure that meant both warning and support. Her pulse was racing now, years of careful secrecy about to collapse in a single moment. She'd imagined this scene hundreds of times, rehearsed different versions in her head. None of them had included Marco Chen, or the way he was looking at her now. With something that felt like admiration mixed with challenge, "Marco," she said quietly. "A warning, EM Properties," he continued, ignoring her entirely. "Elena Moretti. Or should I say, Elena Moretti Esposito? Using your mother's maiden name for business transactions?" The table erupted. Vivian's laugh was sharp and disbelieving. Isabella knocked over her wine, the smart fabric tablecloth immediately repelling the liquid into perfect beads. Dominic stood up so quickly his chair scraped against the marble floor. "That's ridiculous," Vivian said. "Elena doesn't have that kind of money. She teaches high school. Elena doesn't have $30 million, Francesca added. But there was uncertainty in her voice now, the first crack in her usual authority. Marco's device was already projecting a new image. This time it was a news article, the hologram large enough for everyone to see. The Wall Street Journal logo gleamed at the top, and the headline read, "The Mysterious Preservationist, EM Properties Saves New York's Architectural Heritage." The photograph showed Elena in a way her family had never seen her. Power suit, tailored and expensive. Hair professionally styled. Standing beside the mayor at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, surrounded by city officials and architectural historians. She looked confident, successful, completely at ease in a world of power and influence. She looked like she belonged there. Elena watched her family's faces as they processed the image. The confusion. The denial. The slow, creeping realization that maybe, possibly, the person they'd been condescending to for a decade wasn't who they thought she was. "This can't be real," Francesca said, but her voice had gone quiet. "It's real," Maria said. Her mother's voice carried quiet pride, decades of watching her daughter be dismissed finally vindicated. Isabella was scrolling through her own device now, neural commands making her fingers twitch as she searched. There are dozens of articles. Forbes. Architectural Digest. The Times did a profile last year. She looked up, genuinely bewildered. How did we not know about this? Elena stood slowly, walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Manhattan spread out below, a constellation of light and life and stories. Her city. The one she'd been quietly saving, building by building, while her family assumed she was barely scraping by. "My father left me a trust fund," she said, not turning around. Her reflection in the smart glass was ghostly, overlaid on the city. Not from the Morettas. From his mother's side. She was a silent film actress in the 1920s. Did quite well for herself. Invested in real estate when it was still cheap. When she died, she left everything to Antonio. When he died, it came to me. $1 million. Accessible at age 25, "That's impossible," Dominic said. "We would have known." The family lawyers, "Why would you know?" Elena turned to face them now. "You never asked about my life. You asked about my failures. You asked when I'd get a real job, when I'd find a rich husband, when I'd stop being such an embarrassment. You never once asked what I actually did with my time." $1 million is nothing in Manhattan real estate, Vivian said, but she sounded less certain now. "It is if you're smart about it." Elena moved back to the table but didn't sit. She wanted the height advantage, wanted them to have to look up at her for once. "I bought my first building in 2014. A condemned brownstone in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Everyone said the neighborhood was too dangerous, that I'd lose everything. The building cost $400,000. I spent 2 years living in a construction site, learning restoration from YouTube videos and library books. I did most of the work myself. Sold it 3 years later for $2.8 million. Francesca sank into her chair. Her jewelry had shifted to a pale, shocked blue. "You've been investing? This whole time?" Building a portfolio. I specialize in pre-war buildings slated for demolition. Buildings with historical significance that developers like you want to tear down for luxury condos. I buy them, restore them to historical accuracy, and convert them to community use. Mixed-income housing. Art centers. Libraries. Places that actually serve the communities they're in. Marco was smiling now, not bothering to hide it. She's preserved 23 buildings in 10 years. Her portfolio is currently valued at over $200 million. She was awarded the National Historic Preservation Award last year. There was a ceremony. The president was there. He paused. Were any of you invited? The silence that followed was profound. Elena could hear the building's environmental systems, the subtle hum of climate control and air filtration. Could hear Isabella's shocked breathing. Could hear Dominic's jaw literally clench. The sound of teeth grinding together. 200 million, Dominic repeated. The number seemed to physically pain him. Marco stood and moved closer to Elena. Not touching her, but near enough that the family couldn't miss the deliberate positioning. Near enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive that didn't announce itself. I'd been studying your work for 2 years, he said, and though he was speaking to her, his voice was loud enough for the table to hear. Your restoration philosophy. Your community integration model. Your financing structure. It's brilliant. Revolutionary, actually. When Dominic mentioned his charity case cousin who teaches art, I did some research. EM Properties' first acquisition was funded by a $1 million personal investment. Elena Moretti Esposito. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. Elena felt something shift in her chest. So this dinner. You already knew, I suspected. I had to meet you to be sure, and the partnership with Dominic? Marco's smile was slight but devastating. I turned it down last week. Moretti Hotel's reputation for exploiting communities and destroying historical buildings, it's everything my firm stands against. I came tonight for you. That's very presumptuous, Mr. Chen, is it? He moved half a step closer. They were inches apart now, and Elena was acutely aware that her entire family was watching. You've been watching me all night. The way you tilted your head when I mentioned the Bellevue. The way you smiled when I asked about coffee. You knew I knew. You were waiting to see what I'd do. Elena's breath caught. He was right. She'd known from the moment he asked about her specialization, from the way he'd prioritized her opinion over Dominic's pitch. She'd been testing him, and he'd known it. Maybe, she admitted, I don't play games, Elena. I've been circling you for 2 years through your work. Now you're standing in front of me, and you're even more impressive than I imagined. So yes, I'm being presumptuous. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the audience. Sue me, I might, I hope you do. I'd love to see you in court. The tension between them was palpable. Electric. Elena was aware of every inch of space separating them, of the way his eyes tracked her expressions, of the heat building in her own face. This was dangerous. This was unprofessional. This was exactly what she needed after 10 years of being invisible. Vivian's voice cut through the moment like breaking glass. Well. This is wonderful news. Family should celebrate. Her enthusiasm was desperate, calculated. Elena, we should collaborate. Your buildings could partner with our hotels. We could create a whole brand around heritage and luxury. No. The word came out flat, final. Elena, don't be rash, Francesca tried. Family business, you're not interested in my business. Aunt Francesca. You're interested in controlling it. Elena turned away from Marco to face them fully. 10 years of swallowed words were rising in her throat like bile. For a decade, I sat at this table while you reminded me I was poor, unsuccessful, a burden. You made jokes about my apartment, my clothes, my career. You introduced me to your friends as the family charity case, the one you'd so generously saved from poverty. We were trying to help, Isabella said weakly, were you? When I was 26, I tried to tell you I'd bought my first building. Do you remember what you said, Aunt Francesca? Francesca's face had gone carefully neutral, the expression of someone trying not to remember. You laughed, Elena continued. You said, oh, Elena. That neighborhood? You'll be bankrupt by 30. Stick to teaching, dear. Leave business to people who understand it. The memory played in Elena's mind with perfect clarity. Younger Elena, so excited, so proud of her first investment. The family gathered around this same table. Francesca's dismissive laugh. Dominic's patronizing pat on her shoulder. The way they'd changed the subject to his latest hotel acquisition, talking over her like she hadn't spoken at all. At 28, I'd renovated 3 buildings. I tried to share that with you. You changed the subject to Dominic's engagement. At 30, I'd made my first $1 million in profit. You asked when I'd find a real job. At 32, I was profiled in Architectural Digest. None of you read it. By 34, I'd given up trying to tell you anything. Maria's voice was quiet but fierce. She spent Sundays at this table, listening to you mock her, while she was quietly becoming one of the most successful preservationists in New York. Because she wanted to be part of this family. Because she loved you. Despite everything, she loved you. Dominic stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. His face was flushed with anger that looked almost like shame. You made fools of us. No, Dominic. I let you reveal who you are. Elena felt years of patience crystallizing into something hard and clear. You think the Bellevue owners needed cash fast? They had 6 offers. All higher than yours. They chose me because I promised to preserve their family's legacy. That building has been in their family for 90 years. 3 generations born there, married there, died there. They took less money from me because they trusted my vision. That's something you'll never understand. Not everything is for sale to the highest bidder, but why hide it? Isabella's question sounded genuinely confused. Why not just tell us? Because this family's entire identity is built on hierarchy. Who has the most? Who's on top? Who's the biggest success? If I'd told you the truth, you would have either tried to control me, use me, or resented me. Probably all 3. This way, I got to do my work in peace. I got to build something meaningful without your interference or your judgment. Francesca's jewelry had shifted to a dark, angry purple. That's not fair, Elena. We're family, am I? Are we? Elena felt something breaking inside her, something that had been cracked for years finally giving way. Aunt Francesca, you've spent 24 years reminding me I'm not really a Moretti. That my father married beneath the family. That my mother is just a seamstress. Well, you're right. I'm not a Moretti. I'm better than that. The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Elena saw Francesca's face go rigid with fury. Saw Dominic's hands clench into fists. Saw Vivian's desperate attempt to find something, anything, to regain social control of the situation, and then Sophia's scream cut through everything. The little girl burst through the doorway, her face streaked with tears, her small body shaking with sobs. Aunt Lena! Aunt Lena! Nana Maria! Elena's entire body went cold. She was moving before conscious thought, dropping to her knees as Sophia crashed into her. What's wrong, Piccola? What happened? Nana went to the bathroom and she fell and she's not moving and I think. Sophia's voice dissolved into incoherent crying. Elena was already running, Marco beside her before she even registered he'd moved. The guest bathroom was at the end of a long hallway, and Elena's vintage heels clicked against marble like a countdown. She burst through the door to find her mother collapsed on the floor, unconscious, skin pale and lips slightly blue, training she didn't remember having kicked in. Elena dropped beside Maria, fingers finding her mother's neck, searching for a pulse. There, weak, thready, irregular. Maria's breathing was shallow, labored. Her skin was cold and clammy with sweat. She's breathing but barely. Someone call 911, behind her, Dominic's voice. This is Dominic Moretti at the Tribeca Tower, Unit 4501. I need an ambulance immediately. Medical emergency, the 911 operator's response came through the penthouse speakers. The AI routing the call. Sir, there's been a major incident in Manhattan. Multiple casualties. All ambulances are currently delayed 30 to 45 minutes, we don't have 45 minutes. Elena's voice cracked. Her mother's pulse was getting weaker under her fingers. Marco was already moving, pulling out his device. My car's downstairs. Mount Sinai is 8 blocks. I can get us there in 5 minutes. Elena looked up at him, this man she'd met hours ago, and saw absolute certainty in his face. No hesitation. No calculation. Just immediate action. Can you really get us there that fast? Watch me. Marco bent and lifted Maria with surprising strength, cradling her like she weighed nothing. Elena grabbed her mother's purse from the counter, checking for her medical information card. The neural implant buzzed as she uploaded Maria's medical history to her device, blood type, medications, allergies, everything the ER would need. They moved as a unit toward the elevator, Elena rattling off information while Marco held Maria steady. She has high blood pressure, controlled with medication when she actually takes it. History of arrhythmia. No allergies. Blood type B positive. The elevator descended in what felt like slow motion despite the high-speed transport. Elena kept her fingers on her mother's wrist, monitoring the pulse. Still there. Still weak. Maria's breathing was getting more labored. Come on, Mama. Stay with me. You don't get to die proving a point about being stubborn. Marco's car was sleek black Tesla, the kind with full autonomous capability that he'd clearly overridden for manual control. He laid Maria across the back seat with surprising gentleness, and Elena climbed in beside her, keeping pressure on her mother's chest, monitoring her breathing. Go, she said. Marco drove like someone who'd done tactical training. Fast but controlled, threading through Manhattan traffic with precision that suggested either extensive practice or very expensive neural interface software. Probably both. The car's AI was calculating optimal routes in real time, traffic patterns shifting on the heads-up display. What are her symptoms? Marco asked, his voice calm despite the speed, weak pulse, difficulty breathing, cold sweat, cyanosis around the lips. I think it's her heart. She's had episodes before but never this bad. Does she have a history of cardiac events, high blood pressure, some minor arrhythmia, but she manages it with medication. Elena felt tears burning her eyes. When she remembers to take it. Which she doesn't. Because the medication is expensive and she's too proud to accept money from me. Marco's jaw tightened. You're worth $200 million and your mother can't afford medication. She won't take my money. She says she raised me to stand on my own. Not to be kept. She still works as a seamstress because she says it gives her purpose. I've tried to retire her 100 times. She refuses every time. The car took a corner fast enough that Elena had to brace herself. Marco ran a red light, the car's collision avoidance systems calculating the gap in traffic with microsecond precision. She raised you well, Marco said. Elena let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She raised me to be better than them. And now she might die because I was too busy proving I was successful to make sure she was okay. Too focused on my buildings and my portfolio to notice she wasn't taking care of herself. Marco's hand found hers across the center console. Warm and solid. Hey. Look at me. Elena met his eyes in the rearview mirror. She's not dying. Not tonight. I'm getting you there in 4 minutes, and you're going to save her. You save buildings. You'll save your mother. I believe in you. The certainty in his voice was absurd, unfounded, exactly what she needed to hear. Elena squeezed his hand and turned back to Maria, checking her pulse again. Still there. Weaker. Come on, Mama. They pulled up to the Mount Sinai emergency entrance in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Marco was out of the car before it fully stopped, lifting Maria again while Elena ran ahead, shouting for help. I need a trauma team. Cardiac emergency. Female. 62, history of hypertension, possible myocardial infarction. The ER exploded into controlled chaos. Medical staff materialized with a gurney. Elena uploaded Maria's medical history to the hospital network through her neural implant, data streaming directly from her device. A doctor, young, focused, competent, took charge immediately. "Are you family? I'm her daughter. We'll do everything we can." "Wait here." They rushed Maria through double doors that Elena couldn't follow beyond. She stood in the ER lobby, suddenly aware that she was still in her vintage dress, that her mascara was probably running, that Marco Chen was standing beside her looking completely out of place in his expensive suit among the chaos of a New York hospital emergency room. "You should go," she said. Her voice sounded hollow. "This isn't your problem. I'm exactly where I want to be." "Why?" "You got your reveal. You exposed me to my family. Entertainment over." Mission accomplished. Marco guided her to a chair, his hand gentle on her elbow. The waiting room was full of people in various states of crisis: a child with a broken arm, an elderly man struggling to breathe, a woman holding a blood-stained towel to her head. The raw reality of human fragility, stripped of all pretense. "You think I did that to hurt you?" Marco sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Didn't you? I did it to free you." His voice was quiet, meant only for her. "You've spent 10 years hiding your success to avoid their jealousy. Making yourself small to make them comfortable. I wanted you to stop apologizing for being extraordinary." Elena felt tears spilling over, hot against her cold skin. "They hate me now. They envied you before. At least now it's honest." The waiting room clock ticked toward 3 a.m. when the doctor finally emerged. Elena had been pacing for hours, wearing a path in the linoleum that probably violated the floor's self-repair programming. Marco had brought her coffee twice, both cups now cold in her hands, forgotten. The ER had cycled through dozens of patients, broken bones, overdoses, the usual Manhattan midnight chaos. Through it all, Elena had watched the double doors that separated her from her mother, willing them to open with good news. The doctor was young, maybe 30, with the kind of calm competence that came from too many shifts dealing with death and survival. His neural implant glowed faintly at his temple, probably still connected to Maria's vital signs. Elena stood so quickly her vision swam. "Mrs. Moretti is stable," he said, and Elena felt her knees weaken. Marco's hand found her elbow, steadying her. "It was a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. We placed a stent through the femoral artery. She'll need rest, medication, close monitoring for the next 48 hours, but she should recover fully." Elena was crying before she realized it, tears streaming down her face in a way that probably looked ugly and didn't care. "Can I see her? Immediate family only?" "2 at a time." "I'm family," Elena said. "I'm family," Marco said at exactly the same moment. The doctor looked between them, his expression neutral but his eyes tracking the way Marco's hand still steadied Elena's arm, the way they stood close enough to be sheltering each other. He nodded once, the kind of decision medical professionals made based on instinct rather than policy. Room 437. "Keep it brief. She needs rest." The hospital room was standard medical efficiency, white walls, monitoring equipment that hummed and beeped in rhythms Elena's neural implant automatically tried to decode. Maria lay in the bed looking smaller than Elena had ever seen her, connected to machines by a web of tubes and sensors. But her eyes were open, alert, tracking them as they entered. "You must be the man who drove like a maniac to save my life," Maria said, her voice rough but carrying that particular tone of assessment mothers reserved for men interested in their daughters. Marco smiled, the expression transforming his face from controlled competence to something warmer. "Marco Chen, Mrs. Moretti." "It's an honor." Maria's eyes shifted to Elena, and something knowing passed across her face. "He's handsome." "You keeping him, Mama?" Elena felt heat flood her cheeks, embarrassment cutting through the relief and exhaustion. "I almost died. I can say what I want." Maria's smile was weak but genuine. "Besides, a man doesn't drive through Manhattan like that for just anyone." "I'm trying to convince her to keep me," Marco said, and Elena noticed he'd moved closer, his presence a warm constant at her side. "Smart man," Maria approved. She looked at Elena with an expression that had decades of wisdom behind it. "Keep him, we just met, so. I knew your father was the one 30 seconds after meeting him. When you know, you know." Maria's hand found Elena's, squeezing with surprising strength. Stop thinking so much. You've been thinking for 10 years. Sometimes you just have to feel. Marco's voice was quiet. I like your mother. Maria's expression shifted then, becoming more serious despite the exhaustion pulling at her features. Elena, what happened tonight at dinner? Before this? She gestured vaguely at the hospital room, the machines, the evidence of her own mortality. Mama, you need to rest. I need to know why my daughter is crying in a hospital waiting room at 3 in the morning. Tell me. Elena looked at Marco, who nodded slightly. She pulled a chair close to the bed, still holding her mother's hand, and explained. The reveal. Marco's confession. The family's reaction. Her own decade of silence finally broken. The words came easier than she expected, maybe because she was too exhausted to filter them. Or maybe because saying them out loud in this sterile room stripped away the performance of family dinners and left only truth. Maria listened without interrupting, her eyes never leaving Elena's face. When the story finished, she was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the steady beep of the heart monitor that proved she was still alive, still here. Good, Maria finally said. It's time they knew. They hate me now. They envied you before. Hatred is cleaner. Envy rots from the inside. At least hate is honest. Maria shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. I've watched you hide your light for 10 years, Mija. Watched you make yourself small so they'd feel big. Watched you endure their condescension with grace while you were quietly building an empire. No more. I thought I was protecting myself. Protecting you. You were protecting them. From their own inadequacy. From having to confront what they really are. Maria's voice was getting stronger now, fueled by something fiercer than physical strength. You're a Moretti, but you're also an Esposito. My family, we built things. We served communities. We knew the value of $1 and the price of dignity. Your great-grandmother came to this country with nothing and built a life through skill and determination. She didn't need anyone's permission to be successful. Neither do you. Elena felt something loosening in her chest, some knot of guilt and obligation she'd carried so long it had become part of her structure. Don't ever apologize for that again, Maria continued. For being successful. For caring about communities. For building something meaningful instead of just profitable. That's not a weakness. That's a strength they'll never understand. Marco had been standing quietly near the door, giving them space, but Maria's eyes found him now. You see my daughter clearly? I see her brilliance, Marco said without hesitation. Her compassion. Her strength. The way she transforms buildings and communities. The way she endured a decade of dismissal without becoming bitter. Then don't let her hide. Promise me. I promise. Good. Maria's eyes were starting to drift closed, exhaustion claiming her. Now go get some rest. Both of you. You look terrible. She squeezed Elena's hand once more. And Elena? Stop by tomorrow with better news. Like engagement news. I'm old. I don't have time to wait, Mama, but Maria was already sleeping, a slight smile on her face. In the hallway outside the room, Elena leaned against the wall and let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in her lungs for hours. Marco stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the hospital's aggressive air conditioning. Your mother is extraordinary, he said. She's impossible. And nosy. And completely inappropriate. She's right, though. Marco turned to face her, and Elena was suddenly aware of how exhausted they both must look, him in his expensive suit, now rumpled, her in her vintage dress, now wrinkled and probably stained. They'd been strangers 12 hours ago. Now they'd saved her mother's life together, weathered a family revelation, and were standing in a hospital corridor at 3:30 in the morning talking about engagement. About which part? All of it. But especially the part about when you know. Elena felt her heart rate pick up, and she wondered if the hospital's ambient biometric sensors could detect it. Marco, we met tonight. At a dinner party. We don't actually know each other, I know you spent 10 years building a $200 million portfolio while letting your family think you were barely surviving. I know you prioritize community impact over profit margins. I know you love your mother enough to let her work when you could retire her 100 times over. I know you endured a decade of condescension with grace. I know you're standing here arguing with me instead of falling apart, which means you're tougher than you think you are. He paused. What else do I need to know? Everything. My favorite color. My worst fear. What I'm like when I'm angry or sad or overwhelmed. Whether I snore. Whether I'm a morning person. Whether I want children. 1,000 small details that matter when you're actually building a life with someone, okay? Marco's smile was slight but genuine. What's your favorite color? That's not the point, humor me, Elena sighed. Green. The specific shade of oxidized copper on old buildings. Verdigris. It's the color of age and beauty and survival, mine's the blue of old Lalique glass. The kind you can't make anymore because the manufacturing process is lost to time. I saw it once in a building you restored in Chelsea. I spent an hour staring at it, something warm unfurled in Elena's chest. You visited my buildings, all of them. Every single property in your portfolio. I told myself it was research for potential financing, but really I was trying to understand the person who built them. Who chose preservation over profit? Who saw value in things other people wanted to destroy? That's stalking, that's due diligence. His expression softened. Elena, I'm not asking you to marry me in a hospital hallway at 3:30 in the morning. I'm asking if you'll have dinner with me. Somewhere quiet. Just us. No family. No performance. Just two people who maybe want to know each other better. We already had dinner, that was an ambush disguised as a business meeting. I'm talking about a real dinner. Where we talk about everything. Where I learn what you're like when you're angry and sad and overwhelmed. Where you learn whether I snore. Spoiler alert, I don't. Elena felt a laugh bubbling up, unexpected, cutting through the exhaustion and stress. This is crazy, probably. But I haven't felt this certain about anything in years. Marco's hand found hers, his fingers threading through hers with surprising ease. And I think you feel it too. Otherwise you wouldn't be standing here debating with me. You'd have already said no and walked away. He was right. Elena had spent a decade being careful, being patient, building her success in careful increments while hiding from her family's judgment. She'd calculated every risk, planned every move, protected herself so thoroughly she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to just want something without analyzing it to death. Dinner, she said. One dinner. And you have to actually talk, not just ask questions. I want to know about you too. Why you chose restoration finance. Why you care about old buildings. What made you decide to expose me tonight, deal? Tomorrow night? My mother just had a heart attack. I'm not leaving the hospital tomorrow, Wednesday then. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something that isn't vintage. I want to see you in something you chose because you liked it, not because it has historical significance. Elena felt her eyebrows rise. That's very specific, I pay attention. Marco's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the touch sending electricity up her arm. I've been paying attention to you for 2 years. Now I get to actually know you. I'm not wasting the opportunity. The elevator chimed, and Dominic, Vivian, Francesca, and Isabella spilled into the hallway with all the subtlety of an invasion force. They looked exhausted, Vivian's makeup smudged, Francesca's jewelry still cycling through stress colors, Dominic's expensive suit wrinkled. Behind them, Sophia clung to her nanny's hand, eyes red from crying. How is she? Vivian asked, her voice pitched with that particular tone of someone trying to reclaim social control. Stable, Elena said. The doctors placed a stent. She'll recover fully. Francesca moved forward. We should see her. She's sleeping. Immediate family only. 2 at a time. Elena didn't move from her position beside Marco, didn't drop his hand. Let them see it. Let them process it, We are family, Francesca said, but there was less certainty in her voice now. Are you? Elena heard her own voice, calm and measured. Because tonight I learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up. Who drives through Manhattan at dangerous speeds to save someone they just met? Who stays in a hospital waiting room for 3 hours when they could be anywhere else? Who actually sees you instead of just seeing what they need you to be? Sophia broke away from her nanny and ran to Elena, wrapping her small arms around Elena's waist. Is Nana really okay? Elena knelt, bringing herself to Sophia's eye level, finally releasing Marco's hand. She's really okay, Piccola. She's strong. Like you. Can I see her, tomorrow? When she's more awake. But you can help me pick out flowers to bring her. Would you like that? Sophia nodded, her small face serious. The pretty ones. From the market. Not the fake expensive ones from Mama's store. Exactly right. Elena looked up at Vivian, whose expression had gone carefully blank. Sophia has excellent taste. Dominic cleared his throat, the sound carrying decades of discomfort with genuine emotion. Elena, about earlier. At dinner. We should talk. No, Elena said. Standing. We shouldn't. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. You spent 10 years dismissing me, Dominic. Dismissing my work, my choices, my life. You made me a character in your story about your own generosity. The charity case you saved. The reminder that you're successful and I'm not. Except I was always successful. You just couldn't see it because it didn't look like your definition of success. I didn't mean, Dominic started, but Elena raised a hand. You did mean it. All of you did. Every condescending comment. Every dismissal. Every introduction as the cousin you helped through college. You meant all of it. And I let you, because I thought family was supposed to forgive. Supposed to endure. Supposed to keep showing up even when they treat you like you're less than. Elena felt something shifting in her chest, some foundation she'd built her life on finally crumbling. But I'm done. I'm done making myself small to make you feel big. I'm done apologizing for building something meaningful instead of just profitable. I'm done being your charity project. Francesca's jewelry flashed dark red. You're being dramatic, I'm being honest. Finally. Maybe for the first time in 10 years. Elena moved toward the elevator, Marco falling into step beside her. Mama's in room 437. You can visit tomorrow during normal hours. 2 at a time. Follow the hospital rules. And if you upset her, if you bring your judgment and your condescension into her recovery, I will have you removed. Are we clear? Nobody answered. The silence stretched, broken only by the ambient sounds of the hospital, distant monitors, overhead pages, the hum of environmental systems. Sophia tugged on Elena's dress. Aunt Lena? Are you mad at Mama and Papa? Elena knelt again, her hand gentle on Sophia's cheek. I'm not mad, Piccola. I'm just tired of pretending. Sometimes grown-ups have to stop pretending so they can be honest. Does that make sense? Like how I had to tell Mama I didn't want ballet classes because I hated them? Exactly like that, okay. Sophia hugged her again, fierce and quick. I like when you're honest. You're less sad. In the elevator, descending toward the ground floor, Elena felt the weight of the night settling on her shoulders, the revelation, the confrontation, her mother's heart attack, this strange new connection with Marco Chin that felt both inevitable and impossible. The adrenaline that had carried her through the crisis was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Where are you staying tonight? Marco asked. My apartment. Brooklyn. Where I always stay, let me drive you. It's almost 4 a.m. The subway isn't safe. I've taken the subway at 4 a.m. for 10 years. I can handle.